A few years ago, the world went through a massive, unplanned experiment in remote work. And almost immediately, organizations went through a massive, unplanned panic. The logic seems sound. If I can't see what my people are working on, how do I know they're actually working? So organizations responded by developing an arsenal of surveillance technology, keystroke loggers, screenshot software, mouse movement trackers, AI-powered productivity dashboards that measure time on task down to the second. The software vendors promised accountability. They promised visibility. They promised productivity. I'm here to tell you what you actually bought. You bought the software to watch your people work, and in doing so, you just built the most expensive zombie factory in history. When you deploy surveillance technology, you're making a profound statement to your workforce. You're saying, I do not trust you. I believe that value is created through compliance and pressure, not autonomy and purpose. You're using the most powerful technology of our time to reinforce the most bankrupt management philosophy of the last century. I call this the surveillance trap. It's the deeply human, completely understandable, and deeply destructive impulse to manage what we can see rather than what actually matters. This trap's not new. It goes back over 100 years to Frederick Taylor and the scientific management. Taylor designed systems for factory floors where output was physical and countable. If your job is to turn a wrench the same way 1,000 times a day, you don't need to feel safe speaking up. You just need to execute. But knowledge work is not physical. You cannot measure thinking. You cannot count creativity. You cannot track the moment of insight that saves a project. When you try to measure knowledge work with a factory metrics, you destroy the single most important predictor of team performance, psychological safety. Google spent years studying their own teams in an initiative called Project Aristotle. They wanted to know what made the perfect team. It wasn't the highest IQs, it wasn't the best resumes, it was psychological safety. The belief that you will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, and concerns or mistakes. Surveillance culture destroys psychological safety. It creates a culture of performance theater, where employees become experts at looking productive rather than actually being productive. And it drives away your best people, the deep thinkers who refuse to play the game. This brings us to the most dangerous intersection of surveillance and modern work, the blue work bias. In the information age, work is divided into two categories, red work and blue work. Red work is execution. It is the repetitive master task that we can do almost on autopilot. Blue work is cognitive. It's the hard, vulnerable work of solving new problems, learning new systems, and creating something that didn't exist before. When organizations deploy AI and automation, they frequently eliminate the red work. They take the comfortable master tasks, so what is left? Perpetual blue work. I've watched this happen at a technology company. They rolled out an AI-driven workflow transformation. A senior developer, one of their most productive engineers, suddenly began missing deadlines. He went quiet in meetings. His manager looked at the dashboard and labeled him a zombie and began the process of managing him out. I sat down with that developer privately. He wasn't disengaged. He was grieving. He had been the master of the legacy system. The new AI tools made his expertise irrelevant overnight. He was terrified that he was no longer valuable. The manager looked at the data and saw laziness. What was actually in front of him was a dormant zealot in the middle of the most cognitively demanding transition of his career. When psychological safety is absent, the cognitive load of blue work becomes unbearable. Employees are forced to spend their mental energy on solving the new problems, but on managing impressions and protecting their egos. How do we escape the surveillance trap? We use a tool I call the ego filter. It's just a 4-question framework that leaders must apply before implementing any new process, metric, or monitoring tool. Question 1, will this improve flow? Question 2, will this improve feedback? Question 3, will this improve continuous learning? If the answer to all 3 of those questions is no, you gotta ask the 4th. And it's an uncomfortable question. Whose ego is this change really feeding? In my experience, when a metric fails the ego filter, it exists for one of 3 reasons: bureaucratic inertia, risk aversion, or management comfort. It serves the leader's need for control, not the organization's need for performance. We have to stop measuring activity and start measuring outcomes. You cannot force a person to care. You cannot mandate passion. And you certainly cannot track it with a keystroke logger. Engagement is a choice that an employee makes every single day. Your job is to build an environment worthy of that choice. Take the trackers off their computers. Take the limits off their potential. Build a garden of growth, not a prison of observation. Thank you.